Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. It is a week that will live in infamy in the history of CNN. And if anything, it is getting worse by the day. We have not yet installed a countdown clock to the next ethics scandal. We're considering it, though. In the meantime, here is the latest. Earlier today, Project Veritas released yet another undercover video discrediting that channel. Now, Fox hasn't yet confirmed the authenticity of the video, but it appears to show CNN contributor Van Jones admitting that the story his network has obsessed over from breakfast till bedtime for the past 7 months at least is basically a sham.
Hey, man.
The Russian thing is just a big nothing burger.
Really?
The more CNN constantly, Russia this, Russia that.
Because it's ratings.
Now, before who knows him says so. That said, how wonderfully revealing this exchange is. The Russia story is a nothing burger? Yep, we knew that. If only they admitted as much on CNN. But in private, they know it too. You remember the tape released just yesterday in which a CNN producer conceded that his boss, Jeff Zucker, demanded that CNN shows drop actual news coverage in order to spend much more time on the Russia conspiracy, since that storyline makes more money for the network. It is as corrupt as you imagined it was. Meanwhile, according to the New York Post, CNN apparently had to retract last week's bogus Russia story and fire the 3 reporters who wrote it after being threatened with a $100 million libel suit from Anthony Scaramucci. He's the Trump associate who was slandered by the piece. Whoa! What is next for CNN? Well, on his show, Rush Limbaugh predicted the end may be near.
Could Donald Trump be the end of CNN? What a legacy that would be. I think that's what the Trump administration is doing with many in the media. They're like cats. He's got this little red laser light and is just causing them to make fools of themselves, and everybody's laughing at him as they're crashing into walls and sofa and the floor. And that's what little Jim Acosta had happen to him yesterday.
Cats to a red laser light. Awesome. Well, we don't know what's going to happen next at CNN, but whatever happens, this is clearly a network in crisis. And that happens to companies from time to time. Enron, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers. It's not unheard of. The question is, how does your company respond when its corruption is revealed? Well, here's how CNN is responding. Its media critic, Brian Stelter, who also hosts a show on the channel, let loose on Twitter today, attacking the forces of what he described as anti-journalism. Quote, activists promoting hatred and resentment of the press. Millions of people are exposed to extreme anti-journalism views daily, spreading hate about an entire class of American workers. Got that? American workers. In Stelter's telling, those would be journalists, the soft-handed Princeton grads who would be consultants at McKinsey right now if they hadn't worked on the school paper. They're workers. In fact, they're the opposite of workers. They're members of the privileged class, and their fear and outrage at the stirrings of populism is proof that they know they are. When the public speaks, they shudder because they know exactly how much they have to lose. Viewers no longer trust these people for a very simple reason. They're not trustworthy. And it's strange they don't know that. Let's say you own a potato chip factory, okay? And you once had an unbreakable monopoly on snack food. If people wanted potato chips, they had to buy them from you. Then one day, a new company comes along and starts making better potato chips at the same price. What would happen? Of course, you would lose market share. How would you react at that point? Would you try to make tastier potato chips? Or would you attack your customers as stupid and immoral, maybe go on a megalomaniacal rant about how consumers who don't like your chips are spreading hate? Well, it depends how deluded you are, I guess. Mark Stein is an author and a columnist. He's watched all of this pretty carefully. And he joins us now. What do you think of that, Mark? The whole our viewers are terrible, consumers are bad if they don't like us argument. Is that a winner?
No, it's not. And the idea of converting yourself into a victim group of I guess, journalist Americans, the latest hyphenated victim group, that isn't going to really going to work. And I think the problem is, to extend your potato chips analogy, is they're actually selling a bag that has all the packaging of potato chips, and there are no potato chips inside. That's the problem with the Russia story. They went bananas over that Malaysian plane that disappeared a couple of years ago. But at least there was a Malaysian plane that was here one minute and wasn't there the next. Here, there actually is no Malaysian plane, and they're covering it. I mean, you said Jeff Zucker is telling them to stop covering real news. You're not entirely accurate on that, Tucker. Yesterday, they interviewed Elmo about what he thought of Syrian refugees. And oddly enough, Elmo happens to like them. And that actually was the least nutty thing CNN has done in the last few weeks. It's the nearest thing to real news.
It's sad. I mean, there are actually a lot of talented people over there. I work there. I know a bunch of them. They're smart, serious people, but they're being pushed to the side in favor of this garbage. What about the prediction you heard Rush Limbaugh, who you sit in for sometimes, say that they're going to be a casualty of the Trump administration?
Yes, I think that's likely, because the argument that Van Jones was saying, that it's a nothing burger, but it's ratings, that's true in the short term. But there are diminishing returns to this, which is that it's a Russian investigation with no Russians. The only Russian anyone ever mentions is the ambassador, who's like strolling around lunching all over the District of Columbia. He's the only sinister Russian in this story. It's a Russian investigation without any Russians. And at some point, it's going to be like one of those Russian dolls that all the tourists like. You open the big Russian doll, there's a smaller Russian doll, there's a teensy-weensy Russian doll, and then you open up the last Russian doll and there's nothing. And at some point, which I think actually the bulk of the American public have figured out already, there is actually nothing. We're down to the last minuscule Russian doll, and there's nothing inside when you open that up.
So you think that that's a critique of CNN, but I think CNN would call that hate speech. Do you think it should be allowed to? I mean, do you think you're making them feel unsafe by criticizing them?
Well, they actually are advancing the argument now that Trump pushing back against the media, which nobody likes. Nobody likes. Everybody, and I say this as someone in the media, and you're in the media, and you know that. People hate the media. Everybody hates the media.
That's true.
And they hate Jim Acosta going bananas at the White House press conference because the big, mean press secretary won't let him turn his camera on. I'm in favor, by the way. I thought Elmo was excellent on CNN yesterday. I'm in favor of replacing Jim Acosta with Elmo at the White House press conference. The fact is, the public is on the White House's side. If Sean Spicer wants to conduct his press conference in interpretative dance, he can do that, and the public, by and large, if it's a choice between Sean Spicer announcing the Obamacare bill in interpretative dance or Jim Acosta doing his drama queenery, then people would rather have the interpretative dance of Sean Spicer. They're not going to go anywhere with this.
I think, though, the idea, and look, I'm not in charge over there, but the idea is you identify a relatively small but consistent audience of true believers who were sort of, read into the esoteric theory of Freemasonry or Russia conspiracy or whatever they're selling, and you kind of just go with them. You're no longer a national network. You're speaking to a small group.
Yes, and they're very enthusiastic. The trouble, I think the serious point here, though, is that at some point the interests of the Democrat Party diverge from CNN and the other Russia investigation obsessives. Because every time they actually succeed in dragging someone into Congress to talk about it, what happens is it reveals more about Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton or telling Jim Comey not to call the Hillary investigation an investigation. And so it's actually the Russia investigation is really a Democrat investigation. And the more you focus on it, the more it drags in Susan Rice and Loretta Lynch and eventually the president himself. And at some point, the Democrats are going to say, look, it's fine for you to do your ratings, but can we please have more Elmo and less Russia? Because this is going to kill us with Loretta Lynch and Susan Rice and all the rest. Their interests are not aligned on this, Tucker.
So what do they do at that point? Do they go back to finding a new murder trial to cover? Or, I mean, what's kind of the next phase for them?
Well, I think the trouble when you go down this thing, it's like we used to have these things long before television, 80 years ago, when there would supposedly be a 5-year-old boy trapped in a well, and the media would camp out around the well to wait for the little boy to be rescued. And that was dramatic in a sob sister way. But if there's no little 7-year-old in the well, if there actually is nothing there, then all you've done in the long run, I think, is destroyed yourself. And to go back to that Malaysian jet thing, They actually are, in this case, they are the... Do you remember on CNN when they thought the Malaysian jet might have flown into a black hole?
Entirely possible.
That's actually what they've done now. They've taken a very small story, and in expanding it, they're flying their network into a black hole. And whether they can emerge from that, I mean, I realize that's the kind of plot twist. That's Anderson Cooper in X-Men 12 or The Avengers when Loki tears up the space-time continuum. And only Anderson Cooper and Elmo in the CNN spaceship can wrest Earth back from the rupture in the space-time continuum. That's the only plot twist left for CNN at this point.
It's going to take me a full day to recover from that. Mark Stein, that's so great.
That's where they're going. It's Elmo. It's Elmo at the, Anderson Cooper with Elmo at his co-pilot. That's good luck with that, CNN.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.